Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rick Tate, chairman of the Pickens County Republican Party, and this will be our last in a series of candidate forums and debates to try to provide you with some more information on how, so you can make an intelligent vote when you walk into the booth and cast your ballot. We'll start this afternoon with a prayer, as we always do, if you'll join me. Dear Lord, bless us as we gather here today, here in the building, and all those at home watching. Bless our country economically, physically, and most of all right now spiritually. And I pray that you will inspire us to follow your commandment in John 13:34-35. Love one another even as I have loved you, and you will be known as my disciples by the way you treat one another. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. If you'll join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This afternoon, we have the special privilege of having some guests to provide the questions for us this afternoon. First off is Ms. Kimberly Brown with the WSPA TV in Spartanburg. If you would come and take a little bow so the folks can see you. We really do appreciate you coming all the way from Spartanburg to help us today.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
And Mike Ellis with the Greenville News and the Anderson Independent Mail. He's here also to provide us with questions today. So thank you for coming, Mike. If you would, you guys, have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. Need to make you familiar with the rules so you'll know what's going on. Each candidate gets a minute and a half to opening and closing remarks, a minute and a half to answer each question. And a little different today, if a candidate is named or challenged, they get 45 seconds rebuttal. We have a timekeeper here that will be giving the candidates cues, visual cues on where they're at on their time. As always, we're going to be on our best Sunday school manners and make people proud to know we're Republicans and we know how to act in public. So, anyway, forgive my warped sense of humor. We will start now. I don't think I've missed anything that I need to tell you folks, but we'll start now. Make any difference which one? Let Neal go. Go ahead with your opening remarks. And I'll be off to the side over here being the moderator, and you'll hear me through the thing. So here we go.
My name is Neal, and I humbly ask you to vote on Tuesday, June 23rd. This campaign and last campaign 2 years ago showed some stark differences between myself and my opponent. Easily deserves, and Columbia needs somebody who has character, decency, integrity, and shows that with transparency and honesty. And I think I'm that candidate, and I have proven so over the past 6 years. It's clear that when we look at these issues, and we were looking forward to the issues that are coming up, I think that when we dive into them, I'm going to have to contrast myself with Allan. And in that, it is either one of two things on a number of these issues. Either one, Allan is clearly knowingly misrepresenting the issues, or he just doesn't understand the issues. So I ask you to pay attention over the course of the next hour with these issues, and I ask you to vote on June 23rd, Neal Collins.
Allan?
Okay, I'm Allan Quinn. I'm from Pickens County originally. I was born on the Clemson College campus when my dad was just getting out of the Army Air Force in World War II, and lived in Pickens County since then. I understand Pickens County. I know the problems we have here. I think I have some very good answers. Mr. Collins does not agree with some of the answers that I have, but they're good. They've been researched. I went to school all through the Pickens County. I graduated school in 1968. Went in the Army for 10 years. I served overseas in leadership positions most of that time. I worked in the cotton mill when I was in high school in Pickens County. I have a degree in business administration, and I think that's what we need in Columbia. We have too many attorneys. We need people that run government like a business. It's got to be run that way. I've got 30 years at Duke Power at Oconee Nuclear Station, and I've got a successful business for 22 years in Pickens County. And before this one, when we had 3 candidates, I said I was the most conservative candidate in the race. And now I can say I am the only conservative in this race.
And that would bring us to our first question from Ms. Kimberly Brown.
I'll begin with Mr. Collins. You've been in this position for 6 years. What are, say, the top 2 issues that you think the people that you represent need to have addressed, or that you have addressed, and if you have, how?
Good question. So the top 2 issues from day one for me, and continues to be the top 2 issues, are roads and education. But along in there, obviously, in the past few months has been the coronavirus. So on all 3 issues, starting with coronavirus, number 1, I take backseat to no one as far as getting into the issue. I've done daily updates on my political page of what's going on in our county. And then not only that, but acting. We have the one and only program that's set up for county in Pickens County, and that was because of the relationship that I have with the county, and then also a relationship I have with University of South Carolina. And we're testing businesses to get them up and running, and we've had a number. We've had about a dozen so far in the past month to be able to test quickly and get back to work, and that's the whole idea. As far as education, I served on the education committee for 3 years. I've been promoted to the education oversight. I'm one of 3 members of the House on education oversight. And not to be confused, I'm also on House oversight of education. So it is the number 1 issue in my mind, and it's something that I work on daily down in Columbia. The final thing with roads is it's a complex issue with different buckets for funding and different buckets for spending. But here in Pickens County, we have an application for 183 to expand it. It's the second most dangerous road in South Carolina, and it's been decades since this has been addressed, and we have a pathway forward because of our application.
You have a desire to represent this area. There are individuals who have listened to your platform and obviously have supported you to this point. What are some things that you can do differently, maybe 1 or 2 things that you can name that you'll do in a different way, that you'll do better than Mr. Collins, or what is your perspective on moving your platform forward?
My main platform is economic development in Pickens County. We belong to the Appalachian Council of Governments, which is 6 counties that surround us, all along the I-85 corridor. They call that the Boom Belt. Well, now Pickens County, out of those 6 counties, is so far behind the rest of the counties. It's remarkable to look at the numbers. And Representative Collins is on the board of the Appalachian Council of Governments. And in 2018, we had this same debate, and I said the same thing that I have, and I've been talking to Pickens County Council since then. I've been working closely with them. We've made some progress. But Representative Collins said it was not his job in Columbia to help Pickens County with economic development. I completely disagree with that. I think that I've done my groundwork here for 4 years, talking to Pickens County, talking to the Commerce Park. We're talking to a company ready to come in now, and we're going to make things happen. And I can do that. I feel like if I go to Columbia and I can get on the Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee, that I can really help Pickens County gain some good jobs. Because if we don't have good jobs, Pickens County is going to be covered up with the sprawl and become a bedroom county. Now, Easley is a bedroom city. We know that. That's already happened. But we don't want Pickens County to be a bedroom county.
Neal, 45 seconds rebuttal.
Yes, Allan states that we are so far behind. Again, it's just not understanding or not knowing facts. The facts of the matter, and I do serve on ACOG's board, is Pickens County was had the second or third most economic development last year. That is significant. And when he says he's been working with county council, he goes to county council and complains. We don't need, and Columbia has enough divisive people in Columbia representing different parts of the state. We don't need this in Columbia. We need somebody who understands the issues and knowingly and doesn't knowingly misrepresent people, misrepresent issues and misrepresent facts. So to say that we are, quote, so far behind and that our Commerce Park only pays the $8.50 is just completely incorrect. And it's tough to argue and it's tough to debate when the facts are not set forth in a straightforward manner.
45 seconds.
Okay. Looking at the facts in Appalachian Council of Governments, these are some quick numbers. In 2018, all the other counties, all 5, had between 1,000 and 2,000 new jobs for that year. Between 1,000 and 2,000 new jobs for each of those 5 counties. Pickens County had 39. Those are facts.
Okay, Mike, we have your first question. Mr. Mike Ellis with the Greenville News and the Anderson Independent Mail.
We started last time with Representative Collins, so I'll start this time with Mr. Quinn.
That's right.
Pickens County is the whitest county in the state. At a moment when the nation is looking for racial reconciliation, how will you communicate with and represent the diverse parts of Pickens County, and how do you make people feel more welcome and comfortable here?
Okay, I can go back when I was in the Army, okay? We had what they called racial classes that we went to regularly, very regular. And they worked. And this was back in the 70s and 80s when we were having a lot of racial discourse and that kind of stuff. And those really worked. I think if they could implement some of that, you know, group meetings between the people so that they can understand each other, understand the issues, and just come together as one and learn about each other. I've seen that work, and I think that would be the best way to handle it, and I'll just leave it at that.
Neal?
So the first thing we need to do is listen. I think leaders in a time like this need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So with that, we've had a group that is racially mixed that we've been meeting privately over the past year, and it's part of the group that participated in the peaceful protest in Easley. Interesting, Allan wasn't there. And also interesting, he didn't mention his attack mailer 2 years ago of blood on monuments that he sent out and trying to say that I'm against heritage and against history. So we also know that flies the Confederate flag proudly. So in these situations, that's not listening. That's not trying to represent everybody in District 5 or the state. But just as important as the naming of monuments or flag issue or race relations is we need to discuss the systems. And those systems, the important ones are the educational systems, the healthcare systems, and the criminal justice system. And 2 of those 3 I have been deeply involved in over the past 6 years, and I plan to be.
You were named, so you get 45 seconds.
Okay, obviously Neal has not been to our rodeo in Clemson. We do rodeos all over the southeast. We've had big ones. These are professional rodeos. It is nothing but red, white, and blue, believe me. We get complimented on the thing that we do for the American flag and the state flag and the Christian flag. Now where he gets this thing, I fly the Confederate flag clearly, I don't know. So don't believe that I'm not a patriot. I am.
And that would bring us back to Ms. Brown for her second question.
Kind of piggybacking off of that question, as an attorney and also as a representative and then also as a business owner, what would you do moving forward to make maybe your office, your business, your the representative's office, or your attorneys, your law office, what would you do in order to bring different races together? Or maybe you have a diverse office, I'm not even sure. Or what would you do in order to make sure your workers or people who work under you are all on the same page and kind of are working in harmony, or at least are listening to what other people have to say?
Right, and I think we're doing that, and I think we're doing it wonderfully here in Easley. Like I mentioned, we have a group led by a pastor and some local leaders that are talking about race issues in a one-on-one type of setting. Just this past week, we had a Zoom call of college-age students with our local African-American pastor here in town. We had the peaceful protest, which was beautiful in the fact that it was majority white, and as it should be here in Easley with our 90 to 92% white population. But again, getting back to the crux of the issue is we as the majority, we need to listen and listen better than we have in the past. I don't think that we have the answers. I think we need to listen to others. And along with that, though, we need to act. And we need to understand that the systems are not set up in the best situation. Coronavirus is a great example. Even though 27% of our population is African American, something like 44% of our deaths are African American. So we need to go into these disparities. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time and years to change and rectify those things. But I've been working on those for 6 years and intend to continue working on those.
Could you repeat it?
I'll try to. In your business, or even in some of the affiliations that you have, what would you do moving forward in order to bring racial reconciliation, or to cut off the dividing line that sometimes exists when different races come together, considering the climate of the country?
Well, as far as my business, the only people that work in my business is my family. And but we advertise when we do one of these events. We advertise in every area, and we get responses from every area. All people come in, and we try to do that. But I'll go back and say I think that we need to have events, local events, or classes, or things like that, to bring people together and talk about the issue. Bring it out. It's just not talked about. It needs to be talked about. Bring the people together that are involved and talk about it, and make good decisions. And those people become friends, and then they come out and they bring their friends back, and then I've seen it work. It works.
Mike? And your question will go to Allan again.
Mr. Quinn, what are the political positions and personal ethics that best define a Republican in 2020? What are the political positions and personal ethics that best define a Republican in 2020?
Okay, a Republican is, in my mind, is a conservative, and President Trump is a conservative. I voted for him the first time. I'll vote for him the second time. I think he represents what conservatism is. He runs the country as a business, and that's why we've been so successful. I mean, we've got jobs that he has created that affects everybody, every piece of life. We're talking about African Americans, young people, women. They've all got more opportunities before the coronavirus, and it's going to come back quick. But I think President Trump exemplifies what a Republican leadership should be, and I'm conservative, and in Columbia I would do the same thing. And when you look around what's happening in this country, do you want somebody that's conservative and will take strong actions, or do you want somebody that's not conservative and will just go along, and then we'll see the things happening in South Carolina that's happening in Washington right now? You've got to take a strong stand. Republicans will do that.
Neal?
If you'll notice, Mike, he didn't say what ethics or what convictions. And ultimately, it's just loyalty to Trump is apparently what makes a Republican nowadays. But I disagree. I became a Republican back in the mid-'90s with Contract with America. I became a Republican when we had ideas, when we talked about actual conservative solutions to problems. And we didn't put them on a mantle like Allan has done for the past 2 years straight on his 15 Facebook pages. I don't know. But for 2 years, for every day, has put up just false information, knowingly misrepresenting people, or either not understanding the issues at hand. And we can go through each and every one of those issues. And the actual conservative solution, for me, the biggest issue about being a Republican are twofold. Number one is to have integrity. And that is living your life daily with the and upholding your own character to the highest degree possible. And then number two is fiscal conservatism. And that is how I approach every issue when I go down to Columbia. That's how I approach every issue, especially in education. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to integrity, and it comes down to being fiscally conservative.
Allan, would you like 45 seconds?
No, it won't take that long. What Mr. Collins said is not true about these Facebook pages, 15 of them. That befuddles me. But anyway, the things that he said is not true. That's all I'll leave it at.
Okay. Tammy?
Both of you are talking about education. South Carolina is at the bottom of the tier when it comes to education across the country. What will you do, or what can you do in order to make sure children are educated in order to compete with the nations around the world?
You expect me to answer that in a minute and a half, huh? So we have hundreds of issues in education in South Carolina. Number one that people don't talk too much about is our adult education. Obviously, this is a generational type of issue. This is not today and here and now, how do we solve things? So that's number one. Number two is, our teachers, love them to death, but a good example of how we haven't shown them enough love over the past probably 10, 15, 20 years, to the point that it's no longer the profession that our best and brightest should be that want to be a part of. And a good example is the teachers the prospective teachers who took the ACT last year scored an 18. That's unacceptable. And when we took a trip out to Finland to study their educational system, the top 10% of the students wanted to be teachers. We have to raise that level up to professionalism to where it is desired. Then we have the inequities across our state from, when we're dealing with the differences between Allendale County and Pickens County. We need to talk about those issues. And unfortunately, there is some wide disparity in between what our children get and what other children get. That shouldn't happen from a statewide standpoint. And finally, we have this situation of districts are competing against each other, and when that happens, a stark reality is Jasper County has to compete with Charleston County. It's not fair. So hundreds of issues.
Allan, do you need to hear it again, or you
No,
good?
no, I know education. I've followed it very closely. Right now, they have a new education bill in Columbia, and it's not going to be passed this year because of coronavirus. They were not in session. It looks pretty good. I think it needs a lot more work done on it. And the reason I say that is they passed an education bill 20 years ago, and that's what we've been working under. Well, that obviously has not worked. This new education bill gives teachers well-deserved pay raises. It takes out a lot of the mandated tests that we've been making the students take. It takes out some of the computerized teaching that we're doing, and it's putting teachers, if that passes, it will put teachers working closer with the students and helping them. And I'll say this now, computers, they don't inspire kids. Teachers inspire kids. And we need to get away. We need to get away from using the computers. Now, Neal Collins has proposed all kinds of, every time he comes up, there's a new try. We're going to try this, CBE. We're going to try this, CBE. He said that he was on the education committee, which is true. He was on there, but they removed him from the education committee after a while. And he's on the EOC now, which is something to do with the federal government, how they spend the federal government money. Personally, I think we need to get away from the federal government and their funds, because it takes more money for us to comply with their mandates than we get from them.
Neal?
Again, Allan doesn't understand bills, doesn't understand situation. First, he starts out with it's not going to pass. That's up in the air still. Any bill that has passed the House, which that bill passed overwhelmingly did, everything that he mentioned in there that he promoted is something that I worked extremely hard on, and I was one of the 3 or 4 of the horses in the House that passed that bill, including the teacher pay, including cutting state-mandated tests in there. Ultimately, yes, we have a lot to do in education. We do need to try different things. We do need to experiment, and Columbia needs somebody who understands the bills, understands how they pass, whether they can or not, and then also understands that we do need to try. So with that,
Mike? Yeah, it starts with you this time. Oh, well, you want 45 seconds, sir?
No, not 45 seconds. I just want to say that the education bill probably won't pass this year because they're out of session. Now, if they go back into session, there's a possibility, but I've been hearing from some of the legislatures that I know down there that they may go back into session, but it's probably still not going to pass. It needs more work. It just needs to be more work. 'Cause what we pass is going to have to last at least 20 more years. And it needs to be good when we put it into effect.
True.
And I'm for traditional education. Traditional education.
for the viewers' knowledge, we're going back into session June 24th, June 25th, and 2 weeks in September.
Thank you, Neal. Mike?
On somewhat of the same subject, one issue that has consumed South Carolina legislators for years has been the resolution of the Santee Cooper nuclear plant debacle. How would you like to see the state proceed and bring a resolution to this? And beyond that particular issue, how do you get the state and legislators to focus more on issues closer to the upstate? What are a few subjects that you would prefer them spend their legislative time on?
As far as nuclear power, I worked in nuclear power for 30 years. And it's not a viable position to support nuclear power anymore. The reason that is because you cannot get a return on investment. It costs so much more to build a nuclear power now than it did back when they built Oconee Nuclear Station. That you'll never get a return on your investment. The state should get rid of it. They should never have taken it on. They've already got people down there that's going to be facing charges for fraud. Recently, that came out, and they just need to get away from doing what the private sector should be doing. The state's got no business in producing electricity and that kind of stuff, because bureaucracy, it's as the state is, you just can't get everybody together with the knowledge. It takes a lot of knowledge to run a nuclear plant, a lot of knowledge. And if you don't have that, it's very dangerous. It could be very dangerous. So we, as far as nuclear power, need to get rid of it, return some of the money to the citizens that they paid in to it when you sell it. But bottom line is we need to get rid of that.
So Allan's answer to our multi-billion-dollar debt question is we need to get rid of it and give money to people. That is not a solution. We're waiting on bids for Santee Cooper and trying to decide on what the best approach is. We have 3 options, basically. We can sell Santee Cooper, we can change management in there, or we can keep it as it is. And ultimately, where I stand now, and I'm open, as with any issue, I'm open to anything that comes open in the future, or facts may change on me. But as I sit right now, I don't believe we should sell Santee Cooper. It is a state entity with public parks, and ultimately the crux of the question is, how can some company in Virginia do it and we can't? And if the matter is we can, then I think we should keep those resources. What I'm truly looking at in the issue is for our citizens, for District 5 and Easley, I'm going to do my best to protect our citizens from having to pay what is owed on that Santee Cooper. We do benefit a little bit from Santee Cooper as some of our co-ops use some of their energy that's generated, but at the end of the day, when that decision was made, it was for the ratepayers, and my job is to protect the people of Easley, the people of District 5.
Kimberly, I'm going to do a little switch up here, because if we keep it just like it is, every time you ask a question, your first question will go to Neal, and every time he does one, it'll go to Allan first.
Oh, I've been enjoying
so
that.
I'm going to stick one in of my own here, and then after I'll start with Neal, and then after that, you can go to Mr. Quinn. That be okay? Is that agreeable to everybody? Simple question. In the last 2 elections, we've had a South Carolina Republican Party advisory question concerning registration by party. This past Tuesday, as in the one before that 2 years ago, it was answered yes. People were in favor of registration by party by right at 90%. So with that said, and it was 90% in Pickens County, will you support registration by party, voter registration by party, by political party?
Didn't you love the question? Shouldn't the people have the right to vote by their party? I had a number of people ask me about the question, and of course, all of these advisory questions are geared towards answering what is desired. So let's get down to the crux of it.
Sure.
Do we want people to only vote by the party that they have? I think that is a ridiculous issue and solution to what people are trying to do. Ultimately, like in Pickens County, I want people to be able to vote for who their sheriff is. I want them to be able to vote for who their state rep is. So I do want people to have that ability. Second, practically speaking, it doesn't work. I mean, you still have the ability to change your party at any point before the election. I lived in Charlotte for 3-4 years. You had to register by party there. You had the option of going independent so you could vote in both parties. Of course I went independent because I lived in the city of Charlotte. It was all Democrat. I wanted to be able to vote in my city count who represents me. So do we as a party say, no, we don't want people to vote? We want to have a rigid system, and I don't think that's the case. I think we are a big tent party. I think we are a party of ideas, not of rules and regulations, and I think we win on that.
Allan?
Well, I am for closed primaries, and the reason I say that is we're one of the very few states that don't have closed primaries, and they work. Now, what happens when you have open primaries, and it's happened here in Pickens County, if you'll notice when people run, no Democrats run in Pickens County. So what happens, the people that are liberal leaning and left leaning, they take on the title of a Republican and run in our party. And that's what's happened in Pickens County. And if we continue to do that, then we will not have a Republican Party that goes by the Republican Party creed. They'll try to change it. And I think somebody said one time, Neal Collins said that, oh, that old piece of paper, I could tear that up and rewrite it any time I wanted to. And I think that's what we're going to get. I think we've got people that are on one side or the other, and they should be, if they want to have a liberal representative, then they should run as a Democrat. They've got a Democrat Party in Pickens County, but nobody ever runs. And so I think that to make it fair, to make it right, and make us like the other states where it does work, that we need to have closed primaries.
And Neal, you want to respond?
I want to backtrack to, we were talking about education, and you mentioned, Mr. Quinn, about teachers inspiring students. I think we can pretty much agree on that. But you also mentioned about computers and how we need to move away from those and get back to just teacher one-on-one. This isn't my question, but I don't think they have to be exclusive. But here is my question. Because of the coronavirus, things have changed in the classroom. And students may not go back to the classroom. They may not go back for a full year. They may, spend some time at home getting educated, and then some days in the classroom. There's kind of talking, and if there's an outbreak again, then we're going to have to do something in order to protect our children. The schools need money. They also need to have the flexibility to do what they need to do in order to protect kids. What would your vision be, or what could you say moving forward to make sure children are educated, but teachers and parents are protected health-wise, and students are protected health-wise? And I guess I'm just thinking, what's the big picture for education as far as educating kids in the day of coronavirus? I went around the block to say all that. Sorry about that.
Well, we're in unknown waters. And I didn't say completely do away with computers. I said we need to reduce the amount of time if the kids are in school. We need to reduce the amount of time on computers. They need computers, need to know how to use them, and it can be a good teaching tool. But you've got to get the teachers back with the students and working with them and inspiring them. Now, as far as this with the coronavirus, that was a good thing. I mean, if we hadn't had computers and the ability to do online and stuff, our kids would be left behind 1 year. They would have lost a year right here because of the coronavirus. I'm not saying we don't need to do that. We do need to do that in that situation. But I'm talking about when we go back to school and we get this new bill in, and we can easily reduce the amount of computers. Number one, because we're reducing the amount of unnecessary tests. Apparently, they say, well, we're taking all these tests, and they weren't necessary, so we're not going to do that anymore. And that was a good thing. And technology, and when I say traditional education, I don't mean traditional education that I was taught coming up. All the new stuff has to be included in it, but it needs to have your teacher-student relationship and get them to a point and help them and learn what they want to do and what you need to do to teach them those things.
Neal?
What Allan was really getting at is he thinks education should return to some 1960s model without federal government involvement, and he proudly touts being endorsed by this group that says we should get federal government out. And what that in practicality means is between $1 and $2 billion of our $10 billion in education would go away. So for every teacher out there, he's basically saying $5,000 to $10,000 of your money we want to take away, and we want to somehow raise that locally. So the issue with technology in schools, we need to do more. That's not to say that the teacher will always be paramount, but the coronavirus has highlighted the racial and economic disparities that we have across the state. When he says it's great they haven't lost a year, hundreds of thousands of our students lost a year. We have 20 school districts out of our 79 that do not have e-learning capability. Their kids either had to go pick up a packet, or a bus drove them a packet, or they didn't have any instruction since March. Superintendent Spearman just this week said 150,000 of our 900,000 students were unaccounted for. This year obviously affected us. It's going to affect the rest of the nation, but part of that is our ability to have technology, and we have failed in that. And the idea of going backwards in time when we're in this day of age is just, it's not what the state needs.
This will be, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Neal, I specifically said not going back to teaching the subjects I was taught back in the day. I'm talking about teaching what they need to know today to succeed in a job, and I specifically said that, and then you turn around and said, well, he wants to go back 60 to 70. That's not true. That's not what I said, okay? I just say we need to do it, and as far as the federal government, it's been proved that they do give us money, but along with that, they give us a lot of mandates that we have to comply with in order to receive that money. So my point is, if we get out from under their control, let the state control it, and we don't have to pay. We won't notice that money is not coming in because we won't have to be paying for those mandates.
We won't notice $1 to $2 billion.
We won't have to comply with the federal government mandates, which cost more than that.
Okay, Mike, you get this one. After this one, the next two will be the last. Kimberly, you'll get one more, and then he'll get one more. We're actually past 4 o'clock now. Time has snuck up on us here. It really has went by quickly.
Representative Collins, Clemson University trustees voted yesterday to change the name of the Honors College, and now the legislature will be asked to give permission to return the name of the university's signature building to its original name. How would you vote on that issue?
Well, their resolution yesterday will play a significant role in my decision making. I mean, when we were talking about names and statutes that are on certain campuses, and those campuses are telling us, their leaders and their students are telling us that they do not want it, that's going to play a significant role. But like I mentioned earlier, I'm open to anything and everything as facts come to me. I think it's a pretty good indication that in my first year in 2015, we had the horrible situation of Charleston 9, and the only time that the Heritage Act has received an exemption is to remove the Confederate flag from the State House to a museum, and it was a tough vote here in District 5. But I'm proud of my vote to remove it to a museum, and I would be fascinated to know what Allan would do with that.
Well, I really don't want to address just the Confederate monuments. Now, I've been all over the world. I was 10 years all over the world. I've seen monuments all over the world. Anybody can come up at a later date and make a case for taking it down, but that is history. And that's some history that will always be around. The way those things were built and stuff, that will always be around. What I would do, and I think is a good idea, and it has been done, those statues or monuments stay up, and they come up with a plaque that they put beside that monument, and it explains about the war between the states, or it explains about a war somewhere else in the world. And I think that is a opportunity to teach history and not take the monuments down. Now, those monuments were built in the 1890s and early 1900s after the Confederate War. The reason it took for so long to do that, people were putting their nickels and dimes in for all those years to raise the money to do that. And I just don't think that you should take down history just because you've got a small group that don't like it. I think it's got a place in our history, and we need to keep it there. And destroying it, and I don't think they're going to be able to do that in South Carolina, because we have a very strong Heritage Act, and it takes 2/3 of the legislature to do any of that. So I think we're in pretty good shape. I'd like to see them stay there and come up with some of these plaques and put beside them and explain what the real history was. And then everybody, and that's another chance to give you an opportunity for understanding.
Allan bumbled around, but he didn't answer the question. I assume through all of that, he said no, he would keep it up. And he talked about history. The fact of the matter is, the flag was put up at the top in the during the Civil Rights era in the 60s. And it was not nickel and dime like he's trying to make this grand statement here. And then in 2000, the Heritage Act, the very strict Heritage Act, was a compromise of 2000. So we're dealing with recent history here. We're not dealing with back during, I guess, the war between the states is his lingo to it. So, and the reason that I'm strong on this is for 2 years, for every day for 2 years, he has tried to make this an issue and other issues like this, and trying to divide our district and trying to make race an issue. And it's fascinating to me that he won't straight answer the question. And I know this is going to be a video coming up for the next 2 years, and it has been in the previous 2 years. But we're also going to do a video of not specifically asking or answering the question on that.
Allan, you want to respond? Fair enough.
This isn't my question, but it's kind of a comment. When you say don't take down the statues, isn't it possible to remove the statues and just put plaques in their place? And I guess I want you to think about the people who live in your district who don't think the way that you think, to take their perspective and feelings into consideration.
I would always take their perspective. That was my perspective. You know, if people in my district says, yes, we want to move it somewhere, then that I would listen to that. And if it, I mean, we moved the Confederate flag, you know, and I was okay with that. And so I'm open-minded. I'm just saying, now, he talking about this nickel and diamond stuff had nothing to do with the Confederate flag. We're talking about these big statues that they built. And they were people that didn't have a lot of money back in those days, and they contributed what they could to honor their forefathers that fought in that war. And they've done that all over the world. I mean, they've done that. It's not just South Carolina. It's just not Confederate. It's all over the world. And you just don't go around taking things down that people have worked very hard and donated to put there to honor somebody, to honor some of their ancestors. And I just don't think that we should do that. Now, if you want to move it somewhere and it comes up, then I would listen to my constituents. But my position is there's a place for monuments, and it tells history. And that history is not going to go away as long as those monuments are there.
That's what we have museums for.
Huh?
Is that not what we have museums for?
And that's where we moved the Confederate flag. But now you can't put a statue, one of these big statues,
Sure
into
you
a
could.
museum.
Build a tall ceiling,
Some of these
a
bits,
vaulted ceiling.
that's like a big museum. But you know, I'm okay with that. I was okay with the Confederate flag, and I'm okay with doing that. But don't destroy them. Don't destroy our past.
Fascinating to me. I just heard he's okay with taking down the Confederate flag, and this is a guy that sent out a mailer with blood on monuments attacking me. Fascinating. So I'm one of 3 members who have been appointed to the 250-year South Carolina American Revolution Commission. History is important. I love history. It was next to political science, it would have been history as far as my major. But what we need to do through our history, through what we're doing as a commission, is try to get every viewpoint out there. It's fascinating, and I'm doing a deep dive into the American Revolution, and in the past it was just for me on the founders and political thought and stuff like that. But now reading and learning the history of how big the Native Americans were, especially here in Pickens County, and how they fought for both loyalists and for the American side, and then you also have the colonial side, and then you also have our African Americans fighting for both. We have family members who fought for both sides and then switched and fought for both sides again. Fascinating issues that we need to get out in the public, and it's much more complex than a statue. It's much more complex than a flag. This stuff needs to be in a museum. It needs to be in our educational system. It needs to be at our family dinner table of talking about all of these things. So to answer your question, can we put a plaque? Yes, I'm open to any and all ideas. But ultimately, what we cherish and what we put up and I think that goes generation to generation. Just like during the civil rights, apparently they wanted to put the Confederate flag up. And apparently, 40 years later, both Allan and I are okay with it going from there to the museum.
Can I respond?
Sure.
I did not send that mailer out. There was a mailer sent out, and it had a statue. It wasn't a Confederate statue. It was a different statue of Columbus, I think, or somebody, and they had put it out there as a mailer and sent it out. But that was not my mailer.
Okay. Mike, your last question, please. And it will go to Neal first.
There's been a lot of issues we haven't been able to discuss today, and one of the good qualities that a legislator needs, an elected official needs, is being able to compromise and speak to other people. So can you raise one of the issues that we haven't done today, but first raise it from the eyes of your opponent in a good faith way, not a straw man way, and then tell us why you disagree with that good faith argument.
Absolutely, I will. But just real quick, he did not send out the mailer, and I'm looking at it. It was your address, and it has your picture on it. We'll make that public and see. For For your question, one thing that we haven't discussed and one thing that he has consistently tried to attack me on is roads. Roads is a big issue here in Pickens County. It's a big issue in the state. And he likes to quote this fact that there's $500 million sitting in some magical bucket that's not being used, and that there is, out of the gas tax, $500 million was raised and we're not using it. Well, the true fact of the matter is the gas tax raised 34 cents a penny. We are in year 3. It goes up 2 cents per year. That means in year 1, we only raised $68 million. In year 2, we only raised $136 million. Here in year 3, that's 4 times 31. I'm sorry, whatever that is. Ultimately, we haven't even raised $500 million through the gas tax, and he's touting that there's $1.2 billion raised, and it's uncommitted and $500 sitting in a pot. That's just completely untrue. So it puts out into this public this either knowingly misrepresenting this issue or not understanding the issue, puts out into the public that yes, we're not getting our fair share, when in fact Pickens County is doing a decent job. In fact, we have a state infrastructure bank application that would bring in $60 million into our county. Never before happened in the history of Pickens County, and all we have to do is put $4.5 million over 20 years. That is a steal. But again, over a course of every day, spitting out these, knowingly misrepresenting these facts and not understanding the issues, that is creating this distrust in our community, which we don't need here or in Columbia.
Allan?
That's not what I said. When in 2017, when they initiated the gas tax, if you'll dig down into the Department of Transportation website, and it's hard to do, but they came up with a thing, and it says Gas Tax Trust Fund, okay? And it shows all the money that comes in on the gas tax, which is substantial. And it also shows all the other money that has always come in to the SCDOT, okay? At this time, since 2017, they have collected $1.2 billion. That's where that number comes from. 1.2 billion, okay? Right, and 3 months ago, they did have $500 million sitting there. Well, I asked Comptroller General Ekstrom, I said, why is that money sitting there? And he said, well, we just can't find the contractors to do the work because we didn't do work for so long. So since then, 3 months ago, that surplus, instead of being $500 million, it's $570 million right now. My plan is that if I go down there, we're going to let them keep that $500 million, okay, surplus to work off of, to do what kind of work. That's 2 years worth of spending on what they're spending now. But after that, all the money that goes above $500 million should come back to the counties. Now, I could go on what he's done in this county, and it would astound you, but my time is out.
Would you like to respond? Okay. Well, we will go to our 1.5 minute closing statements, and since Neal gave the opening statements first, we'll let Mr. Quinn go first on the closing statements.
Again, I'm Allan Quinn. I hope you'll vote for me in the runoff June 23rd. Now, if you didn't vote in the primary, you can still vote in the runoff. You're still eligible to come back and vote in the runoff. I'm strong on the Second Amendment. I believe in constitutional carry. My opponent voted against constitutional carry 3 times, wouldn't let it out of committee, and so on and so forth. I am pro-life, 100%. I'm pro-jobs for Pickens County. That's my main platform, is to bring good jobs in here so that our children have an opportunity to stay and live and build in Pickens County, and not have to not get an education and have to go somewhere else in order to get a good job. That's my main platform. Fix the roads, again, that's my second platform. I have a plan. I think it'll work. I think once people understand that money is sitting in the bank and it's growing and growing, and that's what happened with our Social Security funds. They grew and grew and grew until there was so much there, they used it for something else. That's what will happen down here. If we let that surplus continue to grow, It'll end up going somewhere else, maybe the pension fund where they have problems, maybe pay Santee Cooper off, I don't know. But it needs to come to the counties. It needs to come to the counties to fix their roads, and everything over 500 million, again, it should go directly to the counties. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Allan, even in his closing statement, can't be factually correct. I did not vote against constitutional carry. What he is referring to, there was no committee vote. What he is referring to is 4 weeks ago, we had one representative, while we were talking about the pandemic to advance government past June 30th, he tried to make constitutional carry a part of that. Of course it was voted down, of course. So now being on the last 3 weeks of trying to make this an issue, it's, again, either knowingly misrepresenting the issue or just not understanding. Easley deserves better. Pickens County deserves better. Columbia doesn't need somebody who either doesn't understand bills or intentionally misleads people. They don't need somebody who will try to do anything to be politically motivated and to advance. We have enough of those people in Columbia. So what I'm asking you is to vote Neal Collins on June 23rd, and once again send a message to Allan that this type of divisive conversations, these type of topics, and just daily of misleading or either not understanding, that Easley is not about that, and we can do better.
Well, folks, I can't tell you how much I appreciate both of you gentlemen coming this afternoon. Can't shake hands anymore. I appreciate you both coming. I know. Thank you for coming. One little announcement, or big announcement I should make here. We had originally planned to have 2 of these today. The other one for the Clemson seat, which is also in a runoff. And candidate Jerry Carter, I talked to him Thursday, I believe it was, had a conversation back and forth, and he decided that he'd rather not. His explanation is his explanation to make. I won't speak for him, but he was very polite, and we had a very cordial conversation, but he graciously or very politely declined to participate today. And I called his opponent, Philip Bowers, and told him, and Philip said since Jerry was not going to participate, that he wouldn't be here either. I actually offered anybody that, if just one candidate showed up, I offered to give them 30 minutes as just an interview with the reporters here today. But Phillips thought that with Jerry not being here, that it wouldn't be fair to Jerry for him to come and do that. So that's the reason that we started today at 3:30 instead of 2, and we respect Jerry's decision and Phillips' decision. This is not mandatory by any means, but we do appreciate you gentlemen showing up today. I hope you got something out of this. Our goal is, like I said at the beginning, is to provide you with information so you can make an informed vote. There's only one thing worse than not voting, and that's voting out of ignorance and not knowing anything. Have an informed vote. Know who you're voting for and why you vote. Why you're voting for them. One of my favorite radio guys used to always say, know what you believe and why you believe it. And especially, thank you, Kimberly, for driving over here today. Thank you very much for coming. And Mike, I appreciate it. And I'm assuming you'll do something on your platforms at work on this. So I've looked for Channel 7, and for Mike's, I'm sure he'll write something about today at some point. Good afternoon, and we'll do this again next election season. Thank you.